My name is Ella Whitmore. I'm 31 years old, and until one Wednesday night, I was quietly paying $8,746 every month to support people who had apparently decided I was no longer family. At 10:38 p.m., my phone vibrated beside my laptop. A message appeared in the family group chat. We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings. My brother liked the message within seconds. My younger sister read it and said nothing. I stared at the screen waiting for someone to claim it was a cruel joke. No one did. 3 minutes later, my mother removed me from the group. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I typed 4 words before she could block me. Thanks for confirming that. Then I opened the spreadsheet I had kept hidden for 4 years. Their mortgage, the luxury truck, the family phone plan, insurance premiums, credit card minimums, a private loan they had sworn was temporary. Altogether, $8,746 left my accounts every month. They called me controlling whenever I questioned the spending, but dependable whenever a payment was due. That night, I finally understood the role they had assigned me. I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was an account number with a pulse. At 12 a.m., I canceled the final automatic transfer. 7 minutes later, my phone began ringing. First, my mother, then my brother, then numbers I didn't recognize. By sunrise, there were 43 missed calls, a threat from an attorney, and a message claiming I had put someone in the hospital. But the most disturbing discovery came later when I learned they had never needed all that money in the first place. Before I tell you what they had been hiding and what happened when they realized their private bank had closed, tell me what time it is where you are and where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story reaches. I worked as a catastrophe risk modeler for a regional insurance company in Sacramento. My job was to study wildfire patterns, building materials, evacuation routes, weather conditions, and financial exposure. I could look at a neighborhood and calculate how one overlooked weakness might destroy everything around it. The irony was that I had spent years identifying risk for strangers while refusing to acknowledge the disaster forming inside my own family. My mother, Diane Whitmore, lived in Auburn, a foothill town less than 40 miles away. My older brother, Grant, had moved back into her house after what he described as a temporary career transition. My younger sister, Lena, rented a converted studio behind the garage while completing an online interior design program she had already quit twice. 4 years earlier, after my father died, I had agreed to help my mother with the mortgage for 6 months. 6 months became a year. Then Grant needed help replacing his truck because, according to him, his landscaping business depended on making the right impression. Lena needed tuition. The roof required repairs. Property taxes increased. My mother developed a talent for presenting every expense as the final emergency before the family became independent again. My salary was good, but it wasn't limitless. I earned performance bonuses during severe wildfire seasons because the company depended heavily on my forecasts. Instead of using those bonuses to buy a home or build my retirement account, I kept rescuing my family. I delayed accepting a leadership position because it required 6 months in Oregon, and my mother said she could not manage the household if I was emotionally unavailable. I declined an opportunity to join a climate risk startup because the salary would initially have been less predictable. No one directly ordered me to make those sacrifices. They simply responded to every independent decision with an emergency until remaining available seemed easier than enduring the guilt. The first time I realized how little my sacrifices meant was on my 30th birthday. I drove to Auburn after working 14 hours during a major fire event. My mother had promised a small dinner. When I arrived, Grant's friends were in the backyard celebrating the purchase of his new truck, the one whose $1,284 Monthly payment came from my account. There was no cake for me. My mother handed me a grocery store cupcake from the freezer and laughed that I was too successful to need a fuss. Grant raised his beer and announced that people with real responsibilities did not expect applause for turning 30. Everyone laughed. 10 minutes later, my mother asked whether I could also cover his commercial vehicle insurance because his business had entered a growth phase. I should have walked away then. Instead, I opened my banking app. That memory returned as I sat at my kitchen table on the night they removed me from the group. I opened my spreadsheet and read each line without the excuses attached. My mother's mortgage contribution was $3,420. Grant's truck payment and insurance totaled $1,947. The family phone plan was $486. Lena's tuition installment was $910. Property taxes and homeowners insurance averaged $733. A consolidation loan my mother had taken out supposedly to repair the roof cost $850. 2 credit cards used for family emergencies required another $400. The exact total was $8,746. I clicked first on the mortgage. Transfer. My hand trembled over the cancellation button. An image flashed through my mind of my mother crying in the bank parking lot for years earlier, telling me my father would have wanted me to protect the family. Then I remembered seeing a photograph on social media from the following weekend. She had used part of the money I gave her to take Grant and Lena to Lake Tahoe. They had told me the trip was a free invitation from a friend. Later, a hotel receipt appeared on the credit card I paid. I canceled the transfer. Grant Snorts had once borrowed $12,000 from me for equipment he claimed would save his business. 2 months later, he posted a photograph from a luxury fishing resort and called it a networking retreat. When I questioned him, he accused me of humiliating him by tracking every dollar. I canceled his truck payment. Lena had asked for emergency tuition after telling me she would be expelled if the balance was not cleared by midnight. The next morning, she posted photographs from a music festival in Napa. She insisted the tickets had been purchased months earlier, although my card statement showed otherwise. I canceled her payment. With each confirmation, I felt grief. But the grief was different from guilt. Guilt said I was hurting them. Grief admitted that the relationship I had been protecting might never have existed. At 1:12 a.m., the final cancellation confirmation arrived. I downloaded the records, removed every authorized user from my cards, froze my credit, changed my banking passwords, and sent a single email. Effective immediately, I will no longer pay expenses for a household from which I have been formally excluded. Future financial arrangements are your responsibility. My phone rang before I closed the laptop. Grant called 6 times. Diane called 9. Lena sent, "What did you do?" Followed by, "Mom didn't mean it." Literally. A number saved as the mortgage broker called twice. Then Grant left a voicemail. "Put everything back before morning. Yeah, you're not allowed to destroy this family because your feelings got hurt." That sentence erased my last trace of hesitation. They believed I needed permission to stop giving them my money. At 6:17 the next morning, Grant pounded on the door of my apartment building. The lobby attendant called to say a man claiming to be my brother demanded access. I told her not to let him upstairs. Minutes later, he sent me a photograph of himself standing beside my car with the message, "We can discuss this privately or I can make a scene at your office." I forwarded the photograph to building security and replied, "Leave the property. Further contact in person will be documented." His answer came instantly, "You sound insane." I went to work anyway. By 8 o'clock, I had 22 emails from my mother. The first called me cruel. The second called me unstable. The third reminded me that my father had trusted me to hold the family together. By the 6th, she claimed the mortgage had already threatened foreclosure, which was impossible because the payment was not due for 9 days. The final email sounded almost professional. Our family attorney believes your abrupt withdrawal of promised support may constitute financial abandonment and detrimental reliance. I knew enough about contracts to recognize intimidation disguised as legal language. I had never signed an agreement guaranteeing lifelong support. Every bill was in their names. I had simply paid them. Still, seeing the phrase financial abandonment made my stomach tighten. They had excluded me from the family, yet somehow I was being accused of abandoning them. At lunch, a coworker quietly asked whether I was all right. When I looked confused, she showed me a public post Grant had written. He claimed his wealthy sister had cut off medical support for our grieving mother. After becoming obsessed with money, he did not mention the truck, the vacations, or the fact that my mother had thrown me out of the family chat. He wrote that I earned well over $500,000 a year, which was false, and that I had demanded control over the family home in exchange for helping. Several relatives commented that success had changed me. An aunt I had not heard from in 3 years called me heartless. One cousin suggested praying for my narcissistic spirit. I almost responded publicly. Instead, I saved screenshots. That afternoon, Lena called from a number belonging to one of her friends. Her voice shook when I answered. Grant says you're going to make us homeless. I canceled payments after Mom told me I wasn't family. She was angry. She wrote that everyone had agreed. I didn't agree, Lena said. I just didn't want to get involved. You read the message. I froze. You also let me pay your tuition while you told people I used money to control you. There was a pause. I had not planned to say that, but I had recently seen a comment she made beneath Grant's post. She wrote that financial help always came with strings. Although I had never asked her to repay $1, Grant told me to write it. She whispered, you're 25. I know. Then you are old enough to decide whether you participate in a lie. She began crying and said my mother had been taken to urgent care because of chest pain. For one dangerous second, my instincts took over. I stood, grabbed my keys, and asked which hospital. Then Lena admitted they were still at home. My mother had refused to be examined because she did not have time to wait. Grant had decided the chest pain was caused by stress. Do you hear what you're doing? I asked. You're using a possible medical emergency to force me to restore a truck payment. That isn't fair. No, it isn't. I told her that if our mother was experiencing chest pain, she needed emergency care, not my banking password. Then I ended the call. That evening, an email arrived from a local attorney representing Diane and Grant. It demanded that I reinstate the payments within 48 hours or face a civil claim for damages. Attached was a typed document titled Family Financial Agreement. My name appeared at the bottom in a signature that looked almost correct. Almost. The slant was wrong and the middle initial was missing. According to the document, I had promised to cover all household expenses until the mortgage was paid in full. I stared at the signature for several minutes. Then I remembered a Christmas dinner 2 years earlier when my mother had asked me to sign a blank sheet of paper so she could compare handwriting for personalized ornaments. At the time, Grant had laughed at how suspicious I looked. They had forged my signature. I contacted Priya Desai, a forensic document attorney recommended by my employer's legal department. After reviewing the file, she told me not to contact my family directly. She sent a presentation notice to their attorney, requested the original document, and warned that attempting to enforce a forged agreement could expose them to serious consequences. The family attorney withdrew the demand the next morning. Grant deleted his post. My mother sent me a message that read, "You're willing to bring lawyers into this? Your father would be ashamed." I responded with the only sentence Priya. Authorized, please direct future communication to council. That should have ended the harassment. Instead, it forced them to change strategies. For the first 2 weeks after cutting them off, I did not feel triumphant. I slept badly. I checked my phone whenever it vibrated. I calculated how long my mother could cover the mortgage without me, then hated myself for knowing the answer. Years of conditioning had taught me that preventing their discomfort was my responsibility. Setting a boundary did not erase that. Training overnight, what changed me was not a painting class or a motivational quote. It was opening my own financial records and seeing what my life could become. Without the family expenses, I could save more in 1 month than I had saved during the previous year. I could finally afford to take a professional risk I had postponed. Repeatedly, for 3 years, I had been developing a wildfire loss forecasting tool outside work. Existing systems evaluated properties. Using broad regional data, my model incorporated smaller details, vegetation maintenance, roof geometry, road width, water access, wind channels, and the likelihood that residents could evacuate before fire crews arrived. I had once presented an early version to my manager, who praised the concept, but said the company would not fund an untested internal project. A former colleague, Marisol Vega, had urged me to create an independent consulting platform. I always refused because my family required predictable income. Now, the reason for refusing was gone. I used part of the first month's savings to hire a software contractor named Caleb Rhodes, an old friend who specialized in geospatial systems. Marisol helped me design a business plan. We called the platform Emberline Analytics. I kept my full-time job, disclosed the project to my employer, and worked on Emberline during evenings and weekends. The work was exhausting, but it was the first exhaustion I had chosen for myself. 6 weeks later, a small county fire district agreed to test the system across 3 vulnerable communities. The model identified a cluster of homes previously rated as moderate risk because they sat outside the traditional high hazard boundary. Our data showed that a narrow evacuation road and dense ornamental trees made the neighborhood especially dangerous. County inspectors visited and confirmed the conditions. Residents received grants to clear vegetation and improve emergency access. The pilot did not make me rich. It proved the idea worked. Marisol posted a photograph of the 3 of us after the county presentation. The caption said, "Proud of Ella Whitmore for building something that made genuinely safe homes and lives." I shared it on my own account. I did not mention my family. I did not realize Lena still followed. Marisol, that evening, Grant posted, "Interesting how some people suddenly have money for vanity businesses after leaving their own mother to lose her home." My mother commented that ambition without loyalty was moral failure. Several relatives joined them until Marisol responded with a screenshot of Grant's luxury truck and asked why a supposedly desperate man needed a vehicle worth more than some houses. He deleted the post within an hour. Then, an anonymous account began leaving negative comments on Emberline's page. The account claimed I falsified data, mistreated my mother, and could not be trusted with public safety contracts. Caleb traced the timing of the posts and found that they appeared minutes after Grant viewed our updates. We could not prove he controlled the account, but the pattern was obvious. I documented everything and continued working. Meanwhile, the consequences of their spending began arriving. Grant's truck lender called because the payment had failed. My mother received a notice that the mortgage was past due. Lena's school suspended access to her online courses. Instead of reducing expenses, they blamed one another. Grant insisted the house should be refinanced. My mother demanded that Lena find full-time work. Lena accused Grant of contributing nothing while using the largest bedroom and storing equipment in the garage. I learned this from Lena, who sent me a Long email. She apologized for staying silent in the group chat, but spent most of the message explaining why she still needed tuition. At the end, she wrote, "I know you're angry, but you can't punish all of us for what mom said." I replied, "Paying your own expenses is not punishment." 2 months after the group chat message, Emberlane received an invitation to bid on a regional contract. The project would evaluate wildfire exposure for several municipalities and could eventually allow me to leave my job. I posted nothing publicly until the bid was accepted. The contract was worth $640,000 over 2 years. For the first time, my success was not being quietly converted into someone else's lifestyle. I signed the agreement in a conference room overlooking a fire-scarred canyon and thought about all the promotions, investments, and opportunities one had declined. My family had always said they depended on me because I was the strongest. The truth was that they had benefited from keeping my strength pointed toward their problems. The day the contract announcement appeared online, my mother called from a new number. I let it go to voicemail. "Ella," she said, her tone suddenly gentle. "I've been thinking. Families say things when emotions are high. It may be time for us to put pride aside." She did not apologize. She did not congratulate me. She simply believed my growing company meant the family bank had reopened. 3 days later, my mother was admitted to the hospital for dangerously high blood pressure. This time it was real. Lena sent me a photograph of the hospital bracelet and asked me to come. I sat in my car outside Emberlane's temporary office, staring at the image. Was I truly becoming the kind of person who ignored her sick mother? Had protecting myself turned into cruelty? I called the hospital directly. A nurse could not provide medical details without authorization, but agreed to deliver a message. I said I loved my mother and hoped she recovered. I also told the nurse that my family might claim I was responsible for medical costs, but I had not agreed to pay them. Grant called 20 minutes later. "You actually contacted the hospital to announce you and pay?" he shouted. "What kind of monster does that?" I called to make sure she was receiving care. "She's there because of you." "No, she's there because she has a medical condition. She could lose the house while she's in a hospital bed, then sell the truck." He went silent. Grant's truck was worth approximately $82,000 when he bought it. Selling it would not solve every problem, but it would cover several mortgage payments and reduce his monthly expenses dramatically. He refused because the vehicle represented the successful business owner he wanted people to believe he was. "You've been waiting for us to fail," he said. "I've spent 4 years preventing you from failing. You had the money. That didn't make you entitled to it." He lowered his voice and told me our mother had named me as the reason for her condition in front of the entire family. Relatives were already sharing prayers online about the daughter who had abandoned her. He said I had one opportunity to correct the story, restore the mortgage, transfer, cover the hospital deductible, and publicly apologize. I asked whether she had apologized for forging my signature. She was scared. "That isn't an answer. You always need to be right?" "No. I need my name not to appear on fraudulent documents." The call ended when Grant threatened to appear at the county office and expose Emberline. During our next presentation, Priya sent him a formal cease and desist letter that afternoon. My mother stayed in the hospital for 2 nights. Doctors adjusted her medication and released her with instructions to reduce stress. I sent flowers without my name because I did not want the gesture turned into a public performance. Lena recognized the arrangement and thanked me privately. A week later, Diane posted a photograph of the flowers and claimed they came from Grant. That small lie affected me more than I expected. Even when I expressed care without surrendering my boundary, she reassigned the kindness to the child whose loyalty she wanted to advertise. Then I received a voicemail from my Mother's mortgage servicer. They were responding to a request supposedly submitted by me to discuss a hardship modification. I had submitted no such request. Priya contacted the servicer and discovered that someone had provided my email address, income estimate, and partial social security number while identifying me as a co-borrower. I was not a co-borrower. The attempt triggered an internal fraud review. During that review, the mortgage company uncovered something my mother had never told me. 18 months earlier, she had refinanced the property and withdrawn $146,000 in equity. She had told me the mortgage balance was nearly unchanged and that my payments were protecting the house my father left behind. In reality, she had increased the debt substantially. Where had the money gone? Bank records later showed that $58,000 went to Grant's failing landscaping company. Nearly $30,000 paid off credit cards. $22,000 funded renovations to the backyard and kitchen. Another $18,000 was transferred to Lena. The remainder disappeared through cash withdrawals and travel expenses. My $3,420 monthly payment had not been preserving my father's home. It had been servicing new debt created to finance their choices. The mortgage investigator uncovered another fact. My mother had received rental income from a small duplex in Roseville that belonged to a trust established by my maternal grandfather. She had told me the property was tied up in probate and produced no usable income. In fact, it generated approximately $3,600 per month. My mother had enough recurring income to pay much of her original mortgage. She had simply preferred using my money while spending hers elsewhere. When Priya confronted her attorney with the records, their response was not an apology. My mother claimed she had hidden the trust income because she feared I would stop helping if I knew about it. She was right. The betrayal was no longer a feeling. It was a documented financial strategy. Once the truth about the trust property surfaced, the family turned on itself. Grant claimed our mother had promised him part ownership of the Auburn house in exchange for helping with maintenance. Lena accused Grant of taking most of the refinance money while pretending it was used for household repairs. Diane insisted both of them had pressured her into borrowing against the property. Each one privately contacted me with evidence against the others, hoping I would return as long as they could persuade me that someone else was the real villain. Lena sent screenshots showing Grant referring to me as the family investment fund months before the group chat message. In one conversation, he wrote, "She'll complain then pay. She needs to feel useful." My mother replied with a laughing emoji. Grant sent bank statements proving that Lena had received more than $40,000 from my mother over 3 years while also requesting tuition from me. Diane sent voice recordings in which Grant discussed damaging my professional reputation until I resumed the payments. They were not exposing the truth because they cared about me. They were trading secrets for rescue. I forwarded everything to Priya. The situation worsened when Grant drove to a public meeting where I was presenting Amberlin's wildfire model to county officials. He stood at the back of the room wearing a suit that did not fit and waited until public comments began. Then he approached the microphone. "My name is Grant Whitmore," he announced. "The woman asking you to trust her with public money financially abused our widowed mother and deliberately forced her into foreclosure." The room became silent. County staff looked toward me. Grant continued, claiming I had controlled the family's finances, removed support without warning, and used confidential information to punish relatives who challenged me. 6 months earlier, that scene might have destroyed me. Instead, I opened the folder Priya had advised me to carry. I told the officials that Grant's allegations were part of an active harassment matter. I provided the cease and desist notice, the withdrawn legal claim based on a forged signature, and confirmation that I had never owned or controlled the family property. I did not disclose unnecessary personal details. I simply established that his accusations were documented, disputed, and unrelated to the contract. The county attorney asked Grant whether he had evidence that I misused public funds or falsified Emberlin's analysis. He had none. Security escorted him out after he refused to leave the microphone. Someone recorded the incident. By the next morning, the video had circulated among local business groups. Grant's largest commercial client, a property management company, terminated his landscaping contract after learning that he had used company-branded clothing while disrupting a government meeting. 2 smaller clients followed. He blamed me publicly. Unfortunately for him, his post drew attention to the county video, the forged agreement, and questions about his finances. Former employees began commenting that Grant had failed to pay them on time. One supplier filed a claim for unpaid equipment invoices. Within a month, his business license was suspended pending resolution of insurance and wage issues. The truck was repossessed in the parking lot of a grocery store. Lena called me from the scene, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Grant had apparently tried to hide the truck at a friend's property, but used it to buy groceries. The lender's recovery agent found it through a license plate camera. Grant screamed, threatened the agent, and blamed our mother for refusing to use her trust money to save him. The house entered formal foreclosure proceedings shortly afterward. It did not happen because I canceled one payment. It happened because Diane had extracted equity, ignored the new debt, rejected a realistic repayment plan, and continued spending while expecting me to return. The mortgage servicer offered a modification if she sold the trust-owned duplex or used its income to cover arrears. She refused because selling or redirecting that asset would reduce the inheritance she hoped to preserve for Grant and Lena. That was when I understood the full structure of her manipulation. My mother had been willing to drain my income to protect assets intended for the children who supported her least. Lena finally moved out. She accepted an administrative job at a dental office and rented a room from a coworker. She asked Snorts whether I would pay the deposit. I said no, but helped her review the lease. For the first time, she accepted assistance that did not involve money. She later admitted that our mother had ordered the family chat expulsion after I refused to pay for a destination birthday trip. The group had discussed frightening me into becoming more compliant. Grant suggested removing me because he believed I would panic and offer additional money to earn my way back. Instead, I thanked them for confirming my status. Diane moved in with an older cousin. After the Auburn house was sold, the sale covered most of the mortgage, but left little after fees and secondary debts. She still owned an interest in the Roseville duplex, meaning she was not destitute, but she no longer had the large house, renovated kitchen, or financial authority she used to control everyone. Grant moved into a weekly motel without the truck or his major contracts. His business collapsed. He blamed Diane for the refinance, Lena for sharing screenshots, and me for weaponizing consequences. He never acknowledged the unpaid employees, forged document, public lies, or years of using my money. 3 months after the county meeting, Diane asked to meet me at a coffee shop. Priya advised against going alone, so Marisol sat at another table. My mother arrived carrying a folder. She looked older, but her first words were not an apology. I want you to see what you cost. The folder contained photographs of the empty Auburn house, Grant's repossession notice, and her hospital bill. I didn't refinance the house, I said. I didn't buy the truck. I didn't forge my signature. I didn't remove myself from the family. You could have prevented all of this. That's not the same as causing it. Her mouth tightened. A daughter who loves her mother doesn't stand by while everything collapses. A mother who loves her daughter doesn't manufacture emergencies to take her money. She said she had only done what was necessary to keep the family together. I asked why keeping the family together required throwing me out of it. She claimed the message was meant to shock me into reconsidering my attitude. Grant believed I had become disrespectful after questioning the birthday trip, and she wanted me to understand that belonging came with responsibilities. So it was punishment. I said it was discipline. I was 31. You were still my daughter. Only when a payment was due. She looked down at the table. For several seconds, I thought I had finally reached her. Then she pushed the hospital bill toward me and said, "At least take care of this." The balance was $6,380. I slid it back. No. Her expression changed from wounded to furious. She called me cold, ungrateful, and poisoned by success. She said Emberline would eventually fail, and I would discover that business associates were not family. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I stood and placed enough cash on the table to cover my coffee. "I hope you become healthy," I told her. "I hope Grant rebuilds his life. Honestly, I hope Lena learns to support herself. But I will never again pay people to pretend they love me." I left before she could answer. That night my phone remained silent. 1 year after the message that removed me from the family, Emberline Analytics expanded into 2 additional states. We hired 6 employees, including analysts who had lost previous jobs after wildfire related insurance restructuring. Our models helped several communities prioritize vegetation clearing, emergency water access, and evacuation planning. The company did not become successful because revenge magically rewarded me. It succeeded because I finally redirected my time, money, and attention to work I had spent years postponing. I purchased a modest townhouse outside Sacramento. On the day I received the keys, I sat on the empty living room floor and opened the old family spreadsheet. The document still listed the mortgage, a truck, tuition, loans, insurance, and phone plan. I changed the title from family responsibilities to what silence cost me. Then I archived it. Lena and I slowly rebuilt limited contact. She paid her own rent, completed a certification course through her employer, and apologized without asking me to finance her forgiveness. I did not pretend the past had disappeared, but I allowed her actions to matter more than promises. Grant never apologized. The last message he sent accused me of stealing the future he deserved. I did not respond. My mother mailed a birthday card with no return address. Inside she wrote, "Family should forgive." She did not mention what required forgiveness or acknowledge her role. I placed the card in a drawer rather than treating it as proof of change. For years, I believed love meant preventing the people closest to me from experiencing consequences. I thought setting limits was selfish. Saying no was betrayal, and my value came from how much discomfort I could absorb without complaining. I was wrong. Help that destroys the giver is not healthy generosity. Support that removes every consequence can prevent people from learning. Responsibility and belonging that must be purchased is not belonging at all. Cutting off the payments did not make me stop loving my family. It forced me to stop financing the behavior that was hurting all of us. My mother had to confront the debt she created. Grant had to face the business he had neglected. Lena had to discover that adulthood could not be outsourced to a sister. I had to learn that protecting myself was not an act of revenge, even when those who benefited from my lack of boundaries called it cruelty. Family should offer care, honesty, and mutual responsibility. It should never become an excuse for one person to sacrifice her future while everyone else protects theirs. Sometimes letting go is not abandonment. Sometimes it is the only decision that allows you to survive, and the only consequence strong enough to make other people grow. So, I have a question for you. Have you ever been treated like the family bank, the fixer, or the person expected to rescue everyone? What would you do if the people spending your money announced that you no longer belonged? Share your perspective, because someone reading your story may need permission to recognize that love and unlimited access are not the same thing. Thank you for watching the story all the way to the end. This video is a fictional story created only for entertainment, education, and dramatic reflection. We hope it reminds you that sometimes life does not give you the apology you deserved, but it can still give you the strength to move on, rebuild, and stop letting the wrong people decide how much peace you are allowed to have.